Well, we are live with Dr. Amy Silver, and I am really excited about this. Whether you're watching live or you are actually picking this up in another way, Amy, it's just great to have your company again.
Oh, I love being with you, whether we're on Facebook Live or anywhere else live or just in person. Love being with you.
It is exciting, but you have had quite the whirlwind. I mean, we had some really great discussions, not quite this time last year, but not too soon afterwards, as you were really navigating people through trying to understand the impact of the pandemic, and various other parts of your expertise really came to the fore, and this got born. And as it turned out, how does it actually feel seeing me hold your beautiful book in my hands right here like this?
Do you know, this is the first, I've written stuff before. You can keep it there just for the whole thing.
Yes, I got it.
I've got it actually in my background too. So,
Yep.
we can all do that. It's the first thing that I've written, which I still really like this far on. I'm sure you know this as well, like that whole, you do something or you write something and then 6 months later you look at it and you go, I didn't see that bit of it, or I could have said it like this, or what was I even talking about, and this is actually, I still really like it. So, the more that people are responding to it, the more I think, it's not the only thing, it's not like revolutionary, but it's a good tool for people to use. So I'm still kind of, I still really like it. So the idea that it's still, gaining in interviews with people like you is amazing.
Well, I mean, yes, and thank you. I'm a big fan of you anyway. We're part of a community called Thought Leaders, and there's lots of authors coming out of the woodwork at the moment, and this being one of them. I think what impacted me the most, and I probably was a little slow on the uptake on this one, but it's what I talked about in the promo video I did for your book. I talked about the idea of reframing our relationship with the one thing we all have to face and have to navigate. And as I was thinking that through, I'm thinking, that's true.
Yeah.
Like, even now, as a friend, a colleague, a service provider, a husband, a father, or whatever it is, I still have lots and lots of fears. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I've got somewhere to go. And so with that in mind, what was the origin story of the book and the inspiration of it?
It depends on how far we want to go back. I think, when I used to do therapy, it was all about fear management, really, not just sort of helping people open up and share and be vulnerable and launch into something that might be helpful or might make them worse. There is a lot of fear in therapy, but also just in trusting the relationship and trusting the experiments that might come out of therapy. And if you cannot help someone move through all of those fears, what you can do together in the therapy is really limited. So, and that actually comes out in all the research when they compare different types of therapies, is that it's the quality of the relationship that really matters. And to me, it always came down to management of fear. And so, to some extent, I've always done this. My PhD was on fear, and particularly it was in the area of fear preventing people from rehabilitating from physical setbacks like chronic fatigue syndrome or chronic pain syndromes. So I've always been interested, but I actually think, as you say, like, weirdly, the more I have spent time thinking about it and talking about it, the more aware of how pervasive it is in every decision that we make, and therefore so important for all of us to recognize where it does show up, and then recognize how it wants us to behave, and recognize what habits we've developed to keep it quiet, because some of those habits don't serve us very well. So it's almost like, that gift of turning something that's unconscious into the conscious actually opens you up to realize oh my God, like there's no end to this relationship that I've got with my fear, and I really need to master it.
Mm, mm. So I find that so interesting. But then again, is it just contextually, like the last 12 months, we use the word pandemic, we have various responses to it. And I have similar conversations with people all the time. So with retail people, I say to them, are people really rude to you? Like, does that actually happen? They go, actually, sometimes it does. I said, well, I don't understand that. I think we should be extra nice to you because you're out doing everything that you can so I can go and get my groceries or whatever it is. But then we've got issues around work from home, issues around return to work, issues around what work from home might be like, and then anything that might be sitting in us as people as in the population of the world, and how we might be feeling about all of the ways that we've been destabilized. So this work seemed to sort of skyrocket a little bit. How did you see the conversations you had over the last year? How did you see fear playing out in people's professional lives and people's personal lives? Because we tend to mix the two when we're a little bit
Hybrid.
Upended. Yeah.
Look, I think that one of the super things that's come out of this crazy period, and of course there's been absolute tragedies too, but one of the good things, I think, or I hope, is that it's got us closer to understanding what's really important to us, what our emotions look like and feel like, and perhaps getting us closer to facing into some of what might have been bad coping strategies to deal with difficult emotions that we haven't been able to use so much. And now we're having to do a whole heap of reflection. And I think that means that there is an increase in our experience of fear. So I think at work, well, not only have we got kind of just fears of, we've all sort of fallen out of the habit of talking to people and being in the same room as people, and, what's right and what's wrong, and all of that will take a period of time of readjustment. But we've also, as you say, kind of increased our vulnerability. And to some extent that has, or increased in our sense of vulnerability, I should say. And to some extent that has actually led to better communication, better conversations, because we're connecting on a deeper and more human level. So there are real upsides to this fear that we have experienced. But my sense is that we are much more aware of the experience of fear, and much more in tune with this opportunity that we have to manage fear for our better long-term success. And so, that's my overall thing, is that there's this appetite. And I think that's why the book is doing quite well and appealing to people to talk about it, because there is, I've been talking about psychological safety for a long time, as have you, and we both know the importance of that for high performance. But it's almost as if we kind of now have a real clarity on what fear does internally for us in terms of the flight and fight stuff. And it's everything from specific things to really global generalized thing. But I definitely feel like there's an increased sense of fear.
Yeah. I'm hearing two things in what you're saying there. So firstly, what you finished with, there definitely an increased sense of fear because the world has been destabilized. My world has been destabilized. Our children weren't at school for a good period of last year. Wife's an educator.
That's enough to destabilize anyone, isn't it?
That's right. My wife's an educator. She's returned to in classroom this year, and it's fascinating looking at particularly the very young grades and what was last year like for them as they move into the grade up. And so, what is that like for a parent? But then there's a sense in which fear can be very personal. How do I respond to the idea of the pandemic? What's happening at work? Will I still have a job? I've discovered I'm married to somebody I don't like, but I'm with them all the time. Like it's all of, not me or you, but that has happened. We're aware of real challenges that people have faced. So So what would somebody be looking for? What are the manifestations of fear? What would I be thinking, feeling, saying to myself, or behaviors that I would be observing? Because what I'm really hoping from this conversation is that people go, yep, that's something that I reckon is time for me to deal with. And what would you say to the person listening that says, hey, if this is happening to you, you might find this useful?
Look, I love that question, and it actually, it's really the first couple of chapters in the book, because I don't think we don't often, if there's a fear, like there's a fear of spiders, or there's a fear of public speaking, or something very specific, we often know that exists already. But it's actually, and so therefore, if you've got a specific fear, this is the book for you. But it's almost like we need to do the opposite as well, and kind of go, where am I now, and where could I be if I didn't have as much fear? Or where is the gap between what I think I'm capable of doing, or what I can see other people doing, and what I'm doing? And I think it's that twist that we need to have, is kind of less about. And then it's a question of kind of working out, well, does fear have a role in that? Because it's sort of people who have quite traditionally a react button, and who get caught quite often thinking that the problems that we have are due to the problems that other people give me. And so that is actually a style of habit which indicates to me that there is a level of fear of taking responsibility for yourself. So it actually kind of needs quite a lot of commitment to understanding where your potential is being blocked, rather than coming from the fear place first. Does that make sense?
It does to me. The bit that jumped out to me afresh was the gap. And really trying to understand the idea of, if I'm here but I want to be here, what might be the blockage? What might be the thing that's getting in the way, or the gap? And then what role does fear play in that?
Yeah, because I think that fear is most commonly the gap. Like I don't have proof on that, but my sense is that fear eats potential. And so therefore, if you feel like you can or could be doing more, or should be doing more, or would like to be doing more, it's worthy to investigate what role fear has in that. And then you can start to look for habits. Okay, well, I don't put my hand up for things, or I come across as defensive, or I don't build bridges across silos, or I don't speak up, I don't show up as the strongest version of me, or I don't reveal much about myself because I'm scared, or and it's sort of looking for the habits that have enabled this gap to me, and then working out, well, usually those habits are a way of satisfying the fear voice in the moment. But they don't serve us in the long term, because they hold us back from what we could be doing. There's that beautiful fable that I know that we've both heard, about the definition of hell being, that you find out who you could have been with your potential. And that gap, that to me is quite a chilling thing, is I sort of think, oh my God, what could I be doing, and what am I not doing because of fear? So some of it is just, if you feel like you could do more if you were a bit more courageous, read the book.
Yeah, you bet. And I think that's that piece around the challenging bit for me, around reframing, because it's not a promise that fear will go away. It's a promise that you can actually change your relationship with it, and therefore change its influence and its impact on your life that you may have given it, or I may have given it. So you called it the loudest guest, which is a little bit of a hint at the metaphor of the way that you construct this. And we did actually talk about this last year a little bit. So just unpack that a little bit for us. How did fear, how is it that fear could be called the loudest guest, and what do we need to be aware of in that experience?
As I said, I think my sense from, my understanding of how the human brain is built and how we have evolved as a social group is that fear is the front running emotion for most of our experience. And fear's job is to keep us safe and make sure we don't get rejected by the tribe and we don't do something stupid. I mean, it's got a really incredible positive purpose. And, thank God we have it, really. It's an amazing thing. We don't want to be without it ever. What is interesting, though, is that that front running thing can get so loud in our head. So I imagine that we've got like a party going on in our head, and fear is one of our guests, as is joy and excitement and sadness and all our emotions. I feel like, come with me in my party, in the party of my life. And what I know to be true is that fear voice, if it's really up, at the front of my party, it will direct what I should be doing, as would any of the other emotions. But I know that fear is the front runner for me and for many, many, many people. And so if fear is the loudest guest in the party and it tells me when to do something, when not to do something, how to do something, who to appeal to, what decisions to make that would keep me safe, I can either tune into it so much that I just, take its cues and take its directions. And what can happen is I can either go super small because fear is trying to protect me by holding me back, or super defensive and attacking because fear wants me to get on the front foot. So it wants me to take a really short-term solution to whatever it sees in my environment. And so when it is the loudest guest and when I am tuned into it the most, that's what I will do. I'll do what it tells me to do. If I take the position of the host and fear is one of the many guests I have at my party, I've got more chance to engage that clever part of my brain where I can say, I can hear what you want me to do, fear. And right now, that's not going to help me in my longer term goals. And so I'm going to live with you while I make this next move, which is going to aggravate you and you're going to get super loud. And that's okay because I'm in control. I'm the host of the party and I know where we're going. So we're just trying to get to this space where we can travel with fear rather than either doing exactly what it tells us to do or pretending it's not there, and just denying, turning away from it, and so it's finding a balance where we can partner with it so that we can hear what it has to say, because it's bound to have really useful things, but the way that it talks to us is always fueled by whatever it thinks is going to work. So it's going to pull up past histories, past stories. It's going to give you a huge sort of visualization of everything that could go wrong. And so it's going to use all these tools. And our job is to stay as the host, no matter how noisy or how loud it's going to get.
Yeah. I love that as a metaphor because it immediately changes my seating plan. If I can stay with it, I can, right? So I go, okay. So how long have I actually put fear at the head of the table? How long have I said, you sit there and tell me what to do? And I love the idea of possessions of the soul. So, we have money, which allows us to have things, but then there are, or possessions, but then there are things called possessions of the soul, which you talk about, like joy or peace. Even love is, I think, a possession of the soul. So I think that allows me to move the seating plan around and say, no, I'd like these things at the front. But equally, what you said there about the way fear would behave, like that petulant, sort of immature, I'm not getting what I want child.
Drama, lots of drama.
stamps its foot, raises its voice, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But the key piece I'm hearing around that is, yeah, of course, as soon as you reframe and change and move your relationship with fear, that's exactly what's going to happen. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It actually means that you're making progress. Correct? Is that the right understanding?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be
So good.
courageous without a level of moving beyond fear. I mean, it's literally the definition. So, we want fear to be there because it does signpost the uncomfortable bit that is required for us to grow. So it's a beautiful companion to have. We just don't want it sitting next to us. I love the table plan thing. I'm stealing that, but like I want excitement to come up, and I sort of always think about it. At my party, it's very glamorous. There's people kind of walking around with champagne glasses and soft music, and that's my party in my head. But the idea that I would kind of hear what fear has to say and then say, yeah, okay, thanks. You go sit down. I want to talk to excitement now. And really sit down and have a conversation with excitement. And so I choose which guest I want to listen to that's going to serve me best in this moment, and or at least get that sort of full spectrum idea of who else is here. Like when I talk to people about this, self-compassion, as is a big part of what I believe in, and it's a part of the model that I talk about in the book. But that is a guest that many people have left way at the back of the party. And self-compassion is crucial for this courage bit, because we have to get to a point where well, of course it's difficult for me to move because I've got fear screaming in my ear. That rather than coming in with the shame voice or the guilt voice, why you stop letting this fear voice stop you, and why are you so small that you can't move forward against this? Like, of course we can't, because we haven't heard from self-compassion for quite a while. So bring that voice forward and go, yeah, it's okay that I feel absolutely terrified at this moment, because I'm on the brink of taking a risk. And yet I know that risk is worthy of pursuit because there's a future that I can see that's worth trying to achieve. So yeah, this idea of partnering with all of those different parts of you, I think is a powerful one that none of us, until we even know how loudly fear is talking to us, we don't really know what it is that we're dealing with. But we've got a whole range of tools in our head to do it.
Yeah. So I love it. I love the personification. I think the idea that I can engage with it, which is a really mature idea, because it means I don't ignore it or act like it's not there, which I would suspect, and I'm not the expert like you, but if I acted like it wasn't there, that's a form of managing the fear in and of itself, right? I ignore it and hope it goes away, and then it jumps out of the closet because it's it's always been there.
Let me just say that I think that's exactly what happens, and that shows that moment. Back to your question about who is this for, is that we get absolutely bowled over by that fear voice, and it's when it is really powerful, it just leads us to paralysis, and we cannot move forward because we haven't learned how to handle the strength that voice has. So I think it is very present, it's very there, and it's up to us to build a relationship with it so that it doesn't rugby tackle us to the floor when we don't want it to. We've built the muscle of being able to tolerate it and live with it. So this deny it's there, push forward means it will come. And it may work, but it's a more dangerous strategy, because when it does come, it will sideswipe you. And that's where I think people get into bad habits of dealing with it in the moment. Taking something like social anxiety really as a simple thing. If you are feeling, socially anxious, then a really quick, easy prop for you would be to have a drink. Because that would quieten down that voice. Now, that doesn't actually help you build the strategies of going to the event, without drinking. You know, you need that prop rather than trusting the relationship that you have with your own fears, that you can manage yourself through those fears. Does that make sense? So
it makes sense to me, because if you just extrapolated that out, the other question then becomes, in what ways am I medicating my fear?
That's right. Yeah.
And then where does that take me?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's avoidance. It's lining up what you say with the most dominant person in the room, and, you know, doing all the groupthink stuff. It's not asking questions that might reveal that you don't have all the answers. It's all of those defense sort of mechanisms that we've become, as you like, well, you didn't say this, but like we've become addicted to, without realizing that is the thing that stops us reaching our potential. Those habits that we have of quietening our own fear become the block to our performance.
Yeah. One of the things that I've navigated through, not so much for myself, but for the environment that I'm in now, sort of in the navigating COVID environment, is I've called it the COVID continuum. And what I mean by that is at one end, you've got people who are still highly anxious about the fact that it exists, that it's on the medical, sociological, and political radar, and are adjusting their behavior accordingly, publicly especially. So I was in a lift one time with my 2 kids. The maximum number of people in the lift was 4. You know, they're minors. You know, they are obviously all of the things that the medical community says that they are, but low risk. And so I said, look, it's okay. You know, the kids are good. They're good. But this lady just backed away. And she couldn't back away from the lift fast enough. And it was that experience that I thought, okay, there's those of us that are at that really fearful end of the spectrum, and then there's kind of the anti-maskers and the various other sort of I'll do whatever I want kind of a group of people, and then there's everyone in between. And so what I'm trying to do, and I'm saying this just to get a bit of feedback from you as a strategy, and I'm hoping it's a good one.
You should have pre-warned me.
I realized I dived in before I checked the depth. But what I'm doing really is, before we even get started, I'm saying, hey, where do you where's your comfort level? You know, are you fist bump elbows? Are you 1.5? Are you mask and various other things? And I'm finding just having that initial sort of space to say, hey, put yourself somewhere on the continuum and I'll meet you there, that's fine, has actually been a really useful thing.
Yeah.
Have you got any comment on that at all?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you know, pretty much everything you do is gorgeous. So, yeah. But, yeah, look, it is. That's perfect. And that, you know, again, that's actually what we need to learn as humans is give me a bit more clarity over where you sit, and I can adjust my communication to enable the best bandwidth for us to pass information between us. So I think that's beautiful. And it's simple, isn't it? I mean, it is so simple, but it, you know, what it does is it shows that you are somebody who is capable of adjusting your style. And I think there are people who actually don't have insight into either how to adjust their style, or don't think that it's even worth, you know, that, you know, my way is the way that I communicate, and so therefore you know, that's what I am. So I think you know, it's a beautiful skill, and one that, you know, you're clearly able to do because you're capable of shifting your style.
Yes, and genuinely, for the people watching this either live or afterwards, that was not in my notes, and I wasn't sure about halfway through how it would go. So that's actually, but I thought, hang on, that could be an example of a strategy that we use. So
yeah, it is.
I'm convinced, and I'm saying I'm as in everybody listening to us, the book's being very well received. How do I start changing my relationship with fear? What do I do? Give me a couple of sneak peeks into your book.
All right. So there are 6 stages to the model, and it is or unfortunately, a personal responsibility journey. So unfortunately, as with most behavioral change, it comes from the inside, and there needs to be a level of a questioning of self, that you could find something out about yourself. The first stage of the model is recognition. So what are the habits that you have developed over your lifetime? What did you call them before? The self-medicating things. You didn't call it that, but I call them safety behaviors. So, well, I don't call them that. It's the world of psychology calls them this.
Right.
Safety
And did
behaviors.
I call them sort of when you medicate against the fears, or you medicate
Yes.
against
Yeah.
some of those behaviors? Yeah. Well, it was the social drinking piece that made me think about it. And I go, oh, it's the person that goes home and eats the bag of chips, or
That's right.
or stays at home full
doesn't go.
time during a pandemic. Which I'm aware of people that have done that. So.
Yeah, so in clinical psychology and in therapy, we would call those safety behaviors. So they're things that we have developed over time which keep us safe from being overwhelmed by fear. Unfortunately, most of those safety behaviors are limited. So they only work when all conditions are right. And so, again, if you talk about somebody who's doing a presentation, if somebody was doing really, really strong safety behaviors, that would be that they would stand behind a lectern. They would have their notes written out word for word, maybe even sort of they'd read them, or they'd have their slides with all the dot points on them. So they've created these habits which feel like they keep you safe. But actually what they do is they build up a wall between you and fear, because you're not learning to tolerate the discomfort of not quite knowing what's going to happen next, or what happens if the slides fail, or what happens if your notes go out of order, or somebody asks a question that kind of takes it into a different realm. You haven't built up that courage that you can handle this. You've attached your success to the props, the safety habits. So what we want to do is actually look for, what have I developed over the years that feels like it keeps me safe, but actually prevents me from being the very best that I can. And that requires quite a lot of understanding about what you do. So the first chapter is called Recognition. It's about understanding, what do I do? When do I do it? When does fear show up for me? How do I react? What are the stories that I tell myself about fear? Who is this fear voice? Like, that's a really powerful question. Can you personify even more by kind of working out, is it a male or a female voice? Is it a young or an old? Do you recognize this voice? And really start to get close to the narrative of that voice. Does it say, you should, you must, you ought? Is it talking to you quite black and white? Does it leave you any room to maneuver? So really that first stage is a questioning, and that's, I think, the most powerful thing that you can do. And it's a circle. The model that I write is a circle, because I think that recognition piece is constantly there to understand what is actually happening for me and how present is my fear voice in that. So yeah, that's really the main tip. Is to spend some time with your fear. And my go-to tip for that would be to start writing about anything, really, whatever you want, just about your day, if you like, and or a particular decision you've got to make, or something that happened that left you feeling uncomfortable. Just start writing, and then on the page next to where you're writing, write the fear voice, maybe in a different pen. And just keep track of what you're saying and what you think. And every time that you hear the fear voice, pick up the other color pen and start writing on the other page the fear narrative. And that can really help you understand this separation between you and what fear is saying. And then then you're able to evaluate it and say, wow, you really got quite far. You really reminded me of that time when I was at school, and everybody laughed at me in the playground. You went straight there. When I was just talking in a meeting. So just that idea of separating the fear voice from from me and what I want is a really
Wow.
crucial, really crucial tip, I think.
Mm.
I could go on.
Look, you could. There's so much more in it, and for those of you that it goes recognition, self-compassion, separation, evaluation, decision, experimentation, and we talked about that last year as well. And you said something really interesting, and I want to sort of bring us into landing. The question I really want to ask you is the payoff. So if I choose to be responsible for the place I've given fear in my life and make the changes that the Loudest Guest talks about, what's the payoff? Before that, though, but before that, you said, unfortunately, that the whole, I just wanted you to just unpack a little bit about your view around the power and importance of personal responsibility there, because I heard what you were saying as in, by the way, everybody, this is hard work. And this is a challenge, and it's a worthwhile challenge. And so I just wanted to hear you share on that a little bit, because I think that's important, because
it is so important.
We could say it's not possible. We could say it's because of that, but you're saying, no, it starts here. You can do it.
Yeah. And you look, this is, right in your wheelhouse, isn't it? And it's so, and I truly believe this, that until we take responsibility for self, there's just no way that we can move forward as being the most powerful that we could be. It's just such a dangerous thing to imagine that it's other people's fault, or I'm not saying that life isn't unlucky or unfair. I think absolutely that's part of my value set, is that I really believe that life is unfair, and I really do believe that. But I also think that we must master ourselves to deal with and to make the most of whatever this life is, and that is a lifelong mission of turning inwards and questioning self, because you're the only person that knows you. It's a pretty lonely world when you really think about your choices. They are all up to you. Everything is up to you, but knowing who you are and how you be is a super skill, I think.
Two things spring to mind before I ask you to close out with the payoff, and that's, I've got a friend, Dr. Robbie Sonderegger, clinical psychologist. He said the best 8 question sentence in the world is, what are you going to do about that? and it's just a really useful one, because when you're banging the table about it being someone else's fault, and someone says, Rowan, what are you going to do about that? I'm going to bang the table even harder. Whatever it is that makes it happen. And
we are so powerful, and I think that's that. I actually got asked yesterday in a podcast sort of what are you frightened of, and that Marianne Williamson stuff about being powerful. I think if we really believed how powerful each of us are, that is what overwhelms me with fear, is what could I do? And yeah, we could talk about this for a long time. But I love that question. Yes. What are you going to do about it? Yeah.
Well, and if I had a quest, I feel like that, we've allowed a certain type of behavior to permeate a professional culture, and that we're protected against weaponizing, and where it's more likely for us to be combative. Whereas I would love to see us move towards something where we see, hey, Amy, you've actually contributed something to the world by doing this, and I want to be part of telling you and telling people about what I see in you that's great. And I think we've really got to get better at noticing and naming and calling people up. And so I lean into this whole idea of fear. It's been incredibly well received. You're getting lots of great engagement on it at the moment. 3, 6, 12 months from now, what's my payoff? What can I be looking for as points of progress?
I think you would feel less stopped by fear. So I think that's the overriding payoff, is that not that you would feel less fear. You may actually feel more connected to fear and have a clearer idea about what fear has to say, but it won't stop you. You won't be fearless, but you won't be paralyzed. So it pushes you forward, because, and you know this as well, the more experience you have of living with fear and pushing past it, the more opportunities open up for you. And so it is never going to run out. There is never going to be, if you're lucky, there's always going to be opportunities for you to experience fear and to work out what to do about it. So it's not about fear. It's about what you will be doing, and what you will be doing is living more closely to your potential. You won't be playing small, and you won't be annoying people. You will be living closer to that best self.
And that is not only it's something to aspire to, it's actually something to be proud of along the way. And I really love that. If people want to find you or know more about you, where do they go and what do they do?
Just look me up. You'll find me. I'm on socials. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. So, and the book is available on Amazon and Booktopia and bookshops and everywhere.
And you're typically at Dr. Amy Silver, aren't you, for people to find you? Yeah. Okay, well done. Thank you so much, my friend. It's just delightful having a conversation with you, and I'm excited for the contribution that the book's making and going to continue to make. I think it's got a lot of life in it, and I'm looking forward to it helping a lot of people for a long time. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for shining a light on it as you do for so many, and thanks everyone for watching.
Easy. Thank you.